still remember how the images formed in our eyes are inverted. And yet we can still see the objects upright. Astonishing, isn't it? Let us now do a quick recap on how the visual information travels to our brain. Neural impulses is generated within the retina and travels through the nerve fibers. Nerve fibers carry these visual information out of the eye via the optic nerve, through the visual pathway to reach the brain. But how exactly we are able to see the objects upright? The answer lies within the visual pathway itself. First, we shall look at the structures that make up the visual pathway. It all begins at the retina of our eyes, where the image is first projected. The optic nerves consist of bundles and bundles of nerve fibers extended from the inner layers of the retina, transmit visual information from each eye separately. This means the right optic nerve only sends the information from the right eye. Visual information from individual eye is now split up at the cross junction, known as the optic chiasm. The optic nerve is now split into two main sections. The nasal fibers, containing information of what is seen on the temporal visual field, and the temporal fibers, containing information of what is seen on the nasal field. Each optic tract now carries visual information of one side of the visual field. For example, the left optic tract carries visual information of the right visual field, whereas the right optic tract carries visual information of left visual field. The lateral geniculate nucleus, also known as LGN, is a sensory relay nucleus, where the visual information is being broken down into several components before being processed by the brain. The optic radiations then send the various visual components to the part of the brain known as the visual cortex, where all the visual information will be processed and perceived as what we see every day. How exactly is the visual field related to the visual pathway? We can see this picture as a whole with both eyes with no effort. But how is the visual information being affected in the events of damages along the visual pathway? To begin with, do take note of the color representation of the pathways. The left visual field is being perceived by the visual pathway in red, whereas the visual pathway in green is able to perceive the right visual field. And when we slice the visual pathway into half, like so, each eye will be seeing one full picture by itself, which totally makes sense. Now, if the retina of the right eye is damaged, the visual field of the right eye will see nothing, which totally makes sense as well. This means that the visual information from the left eye is still passed down to the rest of the visual pathway. If the right optic nerve is damaged, the visual field defect will be the same as before. If the optic chiasm is damaged, visual information carried by nasal fibers of both eyes is not able to reach the visual cortex. This visual field defect is said to be a bitemporal field defect. If the right optic tract is damaged, the right LGN is damaged, or the optic radiation of the right side of the brain is damaged, visual information carried by nerve fibers of the pathway in red will not be able to reach the visual cortex. resulting in a field defect on the right side of the visual field. If the visual cortex is damaged, whatever visual information will not be processed at all. In other words, you are blind even though your eyes are healthy. Both our brain and eyes are very important. Damages to either organ will cause our sense of sight to be affected. It is because we see with our eyes, but visual perception takes place in our brain.